welcome to this workshop on demystifying verse. I'm Steve Purcell and I'm joined today by Neil Jennings and Kelly Griffiths, who are going to demonstrate some of the exercises that I do with students when I'm teaching verse. Now, people often think of verse as something quite scary. It's got these technical terms like Iambic, pentameter, and people can be quite turned off by that. But the point of today's workshop is really that anyone who can count to 5 can do verse. So I'm going to turn to Neil and Kelly, and we're going to just play around with counting a 1, a 2, a 3, a 4, a 5. So, Neil and Kelly, on your feet please, thank you.
Yes.
And we're just going to pass the line, a 1, a 2, a 3, a 4, a 5. The is important, and I'll explain why in a second. Just between us, we're going to hand it to each other by making a gesture. So a 1, a 2, a 3, a 4, a 5.
A 1, a 2, a 3, a 4, a 5.
A 1, a 2, a 3, a 4, a 5.
A 1, a 2, a 3, a 4, a 5.
A 1, a 2, a 3, a 4, a 5.
A 1, a 2, a 3, a 4, a 5.
Oh, why, thank you very much. So what we've just passed around there is a line of Iambic pentameter. That's the verse form that Shakespeare uses. A 1, a 2, a 3, a 4, a 5. Pentameter means 5 beats. And the iambic part means to tum. So unstressed syllable followed by a stressed syllable. A 1, a 2, a 3, a 4, a 5. Now sometimes Shakespeare uses a variation on this. In slightly sexist terminology, that's called a masculine ending. But if we give it a feminine ending, that means we add an extra 11th unstressed syllable onto the end. So that just simply goes a 1, a 2, a 3, a 4, a 5er. Like the money, okay. So, a 1, a 2, a 3, a 4, a 5er.
A 1, a 2, a 3, a 4, a 5er.
A 1, a 2, a 3, a 4, a 5er.
Great, thank you. Now, how does that feel different? How does passing the line a 1, a 2, a 3, a 4, a 5 to each other feel different from passing the line a 1, a 2, a 3, a 4, a 5er?
It feels like I don't want to jump in straight away when I get that final a 5er.
Yeah.
It feels like there needs to be a moment before you take it on.
Brilliant, brilliant. Yeah, that's exactly right, because you get the 2 unstressed syllables right next to each other, don't you?
Yeah.
A 1, a 2, a 3, a 4, a 5er, It sounds like a stutter, doesn't it? So it breaks the flow ever so slightly. Great. We're going to now pass this line of iambic pentameter between us. You can pass it any which way you like. And a slight change of rules now is that you can hang on to that line for as long as you want. So you can do a whole speech, a 1, a 2, a 3, a 4, a 5, a 1, a 2, a 3, a 4, a 5. You can add in some feminine endings, a 1, a 2, a 3, a 4, a 5er if you want. And then just when you're ready, you hand it over to the next person. Everyone clear?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, great. A 1, a 2, a 3, a 4, a 5. A 1, a 2, a 3, a 4, a 5.
A 1, a 2, a 3, a 4, a 5. A 1, a 2, a 3, a 4, a 5. A 1, a 2, a 3, a 4, a 5.
A 1, a 2, a 3, a 4, a 5. A 1, a 2, a 3, a 4, a 5. A 1, a 2, a 3, a 4, a 5er. A 1, a 2, a 3, a 4, a 5.
Great. Now, what did you notice about how some of those lines sounded? When did you, for example, find yourself sounding really decisive?
When you're doing the iambic, when it's on the 5,
When it's
and
on the
then on the 5er, like you couldn't help but go 5er.
Yeah, so you might think about some of the famous Shakespeare lines that map onto that. So, for example, "O Romeo, Romeo, wherefore art thou Romeo?"
Mm-hmm.
Question. To be or not to be, that is the question. Uncertainty. A horse, my kingdom for a horse. Certainty. Yeah? Great. We're going to play around with that another time now. This time, you can hand over in the middle of the line if you want, and if you do that, the next person has to pick up from where you left off.
Right.
So if I say a 1, a 2, a 3...
A 4, a 5.
Exactly, yeah. A 1, a 2, a 3...
A 4, a 5. A 1, a 2.
A 3, a 4.
A 5... A 1, a 2, a 3, a 4...
A 5.
A 1, a 2...
The 3, a 4.
A 5. A 1, a 2, a 3, a 4, a 5. A 1, a 2...
A 3, a 4, a 5... Okay, what did we notice there? What happened dramatically in that space?
It speeds it up. There's a pace that happens and an urgency that happens almost between the speakers as they're taking the lines from each other.
And it's taking you off guard as well when it does kind of like it's what, especially if you've got eye contact here and then it switches to you. It's kind of fine, and it adds that Urgency.
Brilliant. There were some moments there, weren't there, where it felt like it was flowing, like we were completing each other's thoughts. And that can happen with a shared line. A 1, a 2.
A 3, a 4, a 5.
Exactly. Oh, well, exactly. We had a little pause just before a 5 there, so it felt like we had a moment's hiatus, just a little bit of kind of uncertainty where we're not quite sure what the end of the thought is going to be, and then it comes in a 5. We knew it was coming. We didn't know how.
Yeah, that's what I was going for.
Exactly. This is the great thing about this game, by the way, is you can't get it wrong because whatever you do with it, it has an effect. Sometimes it makes the scene flow, sometimes it makes the scene kind of stutter, but that's interesting too. Shakespeare does that. Shakespeare doesn't always complete his lines. Let's play around with this again, but this time we're going to be playing around with actions. So I should add that an action is something that you can do to somebody by speaking to them. So what we might do when we're workshopping actions is think about verbs that you can do to somebody simply by the act of speaking to them. So for example, you can teach somebody, you could bully somebody, you could flatter somebody. Neil and Kelly, can you think of other examples? Things you can do to people by speaking to them.
Persuade.
Spurn.
Great.
Tempt.
Bribe.
Lovely, yeah, good.
Yeah.
Good. How about some positive things?
Excite.
Great.
Entice.
Okay, lovely, good. So I want you to think of an action just to yourself. You don't have to tell us what it is yet, but you'll tell us later. And now to each other, so we'll start with Kelly. You're going to try and do this thing to Neil simply by speaking to him, and you're going to use the form a 1, a 2, a 3, a 4, a 5. Repeat the line as many times as you like. Neil, you can reply if you want, but Kelly, if you want to sort of dominate the exchange, that's absolutely fine too. So off you go.
A 1, a 2, a 3, a 4, a 5.
A 1, a 2, a 3, a 4, a 5.
A 1, a 2, a 3, a 4, a 5.
A 1, a 2, a 3, a 4, a 5. A 1, a 2.
A 1, a 2, a 3, a 4, a 5.
A 1, a 2, a 3, a 4, a 5.
A 1, a 2, a 3, a 4, a 5.
A 1, a 2, a 3, a 4, a 5. A 1, a 2, a 3, a 4, a 5.
A 1, a 2, a 3, a 4, a 5.
1, a 2, a 3, a 4, a 5.
A 1, a 2, a 3, a 4, a 5. A 1, a 2, a 3, a 4, a 5. A 1, a 2, a 3, a 4, a 5. A 1, a 2, a 3, a 4, a 5.
Lovely. Okay. Let's leave that there. So I'm going to ask Neil now what he thought Kelly was trying to do.
Ridicule, or the words are going to completely escape me. Talk down to me.
Yeah, I got that. I was thinking,
Patronise me. That's the word.
yeah, I was thinking reject or something like that. What was it?
The specific one was belittle, so yeah. It was,
Belittle. Lovely. Yeah, that really came across. Now, something that I noticed there was that the turn taking was quite equal. So we had an exchange there that might be called, technical term, stickomythia. So stickomythia is where you have equal lines between the two partners in a scene. One person says a full line, another person says a full line. Often in Shakespeare it rhymes. So an example in Shakespeare would be The Taming of the Shrew, where Petruchio and Catherine meet each other for the first time. He gets a line, she gets a line, he gets a line. It's like a tennis match passing between them. But then something interesting happens toward the end of that exchange, which is where you bossed it, you dominated the turn taking. And that suggested that you were winning the exchange, didn't it? It's that shift in the shape of the scene. And bear in mind, this is all improvised. Kelly and Neil could be doing anything here, and it would have a dramatic effect. So what's just emerged quite naturally from this is from the verb that Kelly chose. We got this kind of ping pong exchange, and then we got her stealing the scene, as it were, at the end. Neil, you ready to do your one?
Yep.
Off you go.
A 1, a 2, a 3, a 4, a 5. A 1, a 2, a 3, a 4, a 5. A 1, a 2, a 3, a 4, a 5.
A 1, a 2.
3, a 4, a 5.
A 1,
A 2, a 3, a 4, a 5. A 1, a 2, a 3.
A 4, a 5.
A 5. A 1, a 2, a 3, a 4, a 5. A 1, a 2.
A 3.
A 4.
5.
A 5. A 1, a 2, a 3, a 4, a 5.
A 1, a 2, a 3, a 4, a 5. A 1, a 2, a 3, a 4, a 5. A 1, a 2, a 3, a 4, a 5. A 1, a 2, a 3, a 4, a 5. 1, a 2, a 3, a 4, a 5. A 1, a 2, a 3, a 4, a 5.
A 1, a 2, a 3, a 4, a 5.
Okay, we'll leave it there. Great, thank you both. Kelly, what did you think Neil was trying to do to you there?
Oh God! It was a persuasive but dominant action.
So what would the verb be, do you think?
I dominate you. I persuade you.
Go on, put it
Kind
out.
of all fits into that. I literally went with frustrate.
Frustrating.
Well,
I annoy you.
Yeah, that was great. Yeah. So we saw, didn't we, how Neil was frustrating her by frustrating the rhythm. That scene did not flow, and that's no judgment on you two. That was I think an effect of the action that you were playing. When she tried to reply, you cut in. Interestingly, that then had an effect on your use of verse, because then you started using a lot more kind of hesitant, unstressed syllables.
Mm-hmm.
You weren't quite sure whether you were carrying on or not.
Yeah.
And again, this is something that Shakespeare does sometimes build into the structure of his scenes, this sense of confusion. So, for example, there's a scene between Macbeth and Lady Macbeth, in which the two of them really aren't listening to each other. They keep starting lines that the other one doesn't finish. It creates a sense of conflict, of tension, of perhaps chaos verbally. Let's try something harmonious here. So does one of you have a nice action to play on the other?
No.
Okay, Kelly. So Kelly, play your action on Neil.
A 1, a 2, a 3, a 4.
A 5. A 1, a 2, a 3.
A 4, a 5. A 1, a 2, a
3, a 4, a 5. A 1, a 2, a 3, a 4, a 5.
A
A 1, a 2, a 3, a 4, a 5.
A 1, a 2, a 3.
A 4, a 5.
A 1, a 2, a 3, a 4, a 5. A 1, a 2, a 3.
A 4, a 5.
Lovely. I think I got that one. Neil, what was Kelly doing to you?
I'm trying to think what the verb would be, but it felt like she was almost flattering me for my knowledge.
Flatter. Yes, I knew it was flatter. Yeah.
Like, it felt like she was a student, really wanted to learn from me, and by sort of giving me all this praise. And I was like, yeah, well, it is interesting.
I think that's why I was so tempted to want to finish the 5, because it was like, no, I've got a point to make to you, and this is how I'm going to do it.
Yeah. You were stopping the line, you were ending the line more than Kelly was in the second half of the scene, and that did feel like it was sort of all the authority was flowing one way.
It feels like you end the line, it feels like you've got almost the authority or the point to make in that.
And I feel like we came in at the same time. Obviously, we're improvising this, but like, as in, we sort of went, I wanted to at the same time, and I think it's because I constantly wanted to reassure you, and then by the end of the scene, it was happening more and more because you were like, oh yeah, no, you are right, and it was easier to like clash at that point.
Absolutely. Yeah, there was definitely an arc there to the scene, and you were just getting more and more cocky as it went on. Now, sharing lines doesn't always mean harmony. It can be something that you do when you're arguing. I want to give you a scenario now. Neil, a while back, you told Kelly, your wife, that you would murder the king and become king. Kelly, you want to hold him to this. You may notice this is there's an inspiration to this particular choice of scenario. You want to hold him to his promise. But you are now having second thoughts. You think it's a bad idea to kill the king. You really want to make sure he does. You're simply going to be using a 1, a 2, a 3, a 4, a 5. Do keep in mind that you can hold on to the turn taking as long as you like. You can also hand over the line mid-scene, but there is conflict here. Okay, let's see what happens.
A 1, a 2, a 3, a 4, a 5. A 1, a 2, a 3, a 4, a 5. A 1, a 2, a 3, a 4, a 5.
A 1, a 2, a 3, a 4, a 5. A 1, a 2, a 3, a 4, a 5. A 1, a 2, a 3,
a 4, a 5. A 1, a 2, a 3, a 4,
a 5. A 1, 1, a 2, a 3, a 4, a 5. A 1, a 2, a 3, a 4, a 5. A 1, a 2, a 3, a 4, a 5. A 1, a 2.
A 3, a 4, a 5.
A 1, a 2, a 3, a 4, a 5.
A 1, a 2, a 3.
A 4, a 5.
A 1, a 2.
A 3, a 4, a 5.
A 1, a 2, a 3.
A 4, a 5. A 1, a 2, a 3, a 4, a 5. A 1, a 2, a 3, a 4, a 5. A 1, a 2, a 3, a 4, a 5.
A 1, a 2, a 3,
A
a
4, a 5.
A 1, a 2, a 3, a 4, a 5.
A 1, a 2, a 3, a 4, a 5.
A 1, a 2, a 3.
A 4, a 5.
Lovely, good, yeah. Now, there was so much. Yeah, no, do that, absolutely. That was brilliant. I love it when you have that kind of hiatus in the middle of a line. There's a technical term for that. Whether that's shared between speakers or something that happens just when you're speaking solo and you have a pause in the middle of a line. It's called a caesura. And what that does, and I think that did that there, is it kind of leaves us on our toes. There's a wonderful exercise that you can do. Would you mind just pausing for a second so I can demonstrate this? Where you go a 1, a 2, a 3, a 4, a 5, and if you pause on an unstressed syllable, a 1, a 2, a 3, you're kind of waiting to put your foot down. Literally, iambic beats are called feet. So this is a really kind of literal metaphor for that. But I think that happened there in that scene, didn't it?
Yes.
We were in tension, waiting for the resolution of
I
that
felt like
line.
neither of us wanted to finish that line. And I was like, oh my, I look up, and then you finished it in this most kind of like dismissive way. And it was like, you left all of that power there, and it was almost like whoever speaks now loses the power, and then the way that you said it maintained the power, even though you were the one that was speaking.
Yeah.
It was really strong.
Now let's talk about that because I think a lot of effects came out of that improvisation. How would you describe the effect of that? What was the story that you were telling there in terms of the way the relationship developed over the course of the scene?
Well, it was so fun, you sort of like just storming in at the beginning of the scene and sort of going in your 1 or 2 or 3s, but going, you know, I've decided this and there's nothing you can say. And then I was sort of going, I beg your pardon. I've decided this and there's nothing you can say. No, I've decided this and there's nothing you can say. And all that sort of, that's how it felt. And then, I think by using the pauses and the stresses in the 1 or 2 or 3s was really fun to play with in terms of what you're actioning for those.
You are breaking up when especially in that where it was very much felt like you were on gaining that power. By you offering a line that wasn't complete, it is like you're daring say something. Say something more.
Absolutely. And there was a moment where you offered him a line and you completed it, and it felt like defiance. It felt quite strong. A 4 or 5. So there. But then, as the scene went on, it started to feel more and more like Kelly was setting up a thought for you to complete. And of course then you would make an objection, but the objection would finish mid-line and she'd complete the thought. And the thought would be, so you see, you agree with me after all.
And that's happened right in the middle of the scene, which I feel like was the turning point, which was quite fun, where we actually said a 4 or 5 at the same time, while working with you doing that. I thought you were gonna, but it worked even though we said it
Because it's like we're saying exactly
at the same time, but in very different ways. Like I had a different action between my 4 or 5, and you had you were completing the line as far as you were concerned. You weren't expecting me to say the same thing at the same time, but in a completely different way. And then all of a sudden the balance kind of shifted.
Yeah. And then you took that opportunity to dominate the turn taking. You did quite a long speech.
Yeah.
Which really then felt like you were wrapping up your arguments, as it were, and Neil couldn't fail but be persuaded. Interestingly, that scene that I based that on, which is of course a scene in Macbeth in which Lady Macbeth tries to persuade Macbeth to kill King Duncan, does actually finish on an incomplete line. So we do get this sense of dun 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 or something kind of hanging. This is something Shakespeare does quite a lot. If you play this game yourself, whether you're doing this at school or with a company of actors or something like that. Embrace the mistakes. People make mistakes when they play this, and sometimes forget to complete the line and start it again. Sometimes people can't quite count to 5 and they add a 6 or something like that. Those mistakes are gold dust, because Shakespeare does these things too. There is no single right way to make a scene using this pattern. And those moments when someone does make a mistake are actually moments of opportunity, because they might create a sense of incompletion or a sense of chaos, or something else Shakespeare does is sometimes leaving out the unstressed syllables altogether. You just get someone coming on going 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 occasionally. Oh, 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 in a famous example. Should we try another scenario?
Yes.
So with that in mind, it's okay for you to occasionally break the rules and make mistakes. Let's go with a scenario in which, Neil, you're trying to persuade Kelly that her significant other has been unfaithful to her. You don't believe this. Your significant other is faithful. But no, you have good evidence and arguments as to why that's not the case. Okay? Off you go.
A 1, a 2, a 3, a 4, a 5. A 1, a 2.
A 3, a 4, a 5.
A 1, a 2, a 3, a 4, a 5.
A 1, a 2, a 3, a 4, a 5.
A 1, a 2, a 3, a 4, a 5. A
1, a 2, a 3.
A 4, a 5.
A 1, a 2, a 3, a 4, a 5.
A 1, a 2, a 3, a 4, a 5.
A 1, a 2, a 3.
A 4, a 5.
A 1, a 2, a 3, a 4, a 5.
A 1, a 2, a 3, a 4, a 5. A 1, a 2, a 3, a 4, a 5.
A 1, a 2, a 3, a 4, a 5. A 1, a 2, a 3, a 4, a 5. A 1, a 2, a 3, a 4, a 5.
A 1, a 2, a
3, a 4, a 5.
A 1, a 2, a 3.
A 4, a 5.
A 1, a 2, a 3, a 4, a 5.
A 1, a 2, a 3, a 4, a 5. A 1, a 2, a 3.
A 4, a 5. A 1, a 2, a 3, a 4, a 5. A 1, a 2, a 3, a 4.
A 5.
Oh,
A 1, a 2, a 3, a 4, a 5.
1, 2, a 3.
A 4, a 5.
1, a 2, a 3, a 4.
A 5. A 1, a 2, a 3, a 4, a 5.
A 1, a 2, a 3, a 4, a 5.
A 1, a 2, a 3, a 4, a 5. A 1, a 2, a 3, a 4, a 5. A 1, a 2, a 3, a 4, a 5. A 1, a 2, a 3, a 4.
A 5. Great.
We'll leave that there. Lovely, lovely.
Oh no!
Yeah, could you describe what happened there? How did the rhythm help you tell that story?
Oh gosh.
No, please.
No, well, I was just going to say, it was hard when you didn't finish your sentence, because I wanted, well, what was a really, really fun bit about, I really enjoyed, was when you were going, well, it's not, it was that sort of 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. 1, 2, 3.
I was
A 4,
enjoying
5.
myself with that bit
Yeah,
as well,
it
because it felt a little bit cruel.
Yeah.
But I knew I was doing it. I knew I was saying something and not finishing it on purpose.
Yeah.
Knowing that you had to say something.
Yeah, absolutely. And you were doing that, by the way, was of course based on Othello. Iago persuading Othello that Desdemona's been unfaithful to him. And Iago does pretty much what Neil was doing there, which is to set up an idea, but leave it hanging.
Yeah.
So that then you had to complete it.
Yeah, and thinking about that, I'm trying not to relate it to the shows that the plays that it's based on, but like thinking about it now, there's that. I can't remember the exact bit of text, but it does start with sort of like, think she's been unfaithful, and then halfway through when you're doing that, 1, 2, 3, it's the whole handkerchief kind of. Gosh, I wish I could remember the text. But there's a bit in the middle where it does exactly that, where it's that whole sort of like, oh, I don't suppose you could have done that. The handkerchief. The handkerchief. My handkerchief, you know, and it's that kind of, yeah, and that all came.
Just saying enough to
Yeah.
What has that person done? No, I shouldn't really tell you.
Yeah.
But I mean, there was. That's the thing.
Good.
Very empowering.
Yeah, absolutely. I think we've got time for one more exercise, and this is a slightly more advanced exercise. This is a variation on a 1, a 2, a 3, or 4, or 5. These two are very good at this, so I'm going to push them. If you're working with a group of beginners, maybe leave this until you've got used to the 1, or 2, or 3, or 4, or 5 rhythm. But this is where we replace a 1, or 2, or 3, or 4, or 5 with the phrase a rat-a-tat-a-tat-a-tat-a-tat. So it's like the sound of a machine gun or something like that. You know, so verse can really have this effect, especially if it's delivered fast. So we developed this exercise when we were doing A Midsummer Night's Dream, which both Kelly and Neil were in, and the quarrel that the four lovers have in the middle of that play, we found really does feel like machine gun fire if you play it fast and play the verse, you know, put the stresses in all the right places. So we're going to do an improvisation now where we're going to find a high stakes scenario. I think it's going to be that one of them, they're a couple, and one of them is accusing the other one of infidelity. Any takers?
I'll accuse you.
Great, and you're going to defend yourself.
Right.
Okay, so so we've got a high stakes argument, and rather than a 1, or 2, or 3, or 4, or 5, we're getting a rat-a-tat-a-tat-a-tat-a-tat. So we can hear the beginning of the line because it's a rat, and then the other's a tat-a-tat-a-tat-a-tat. But we may well find that we get a little bit lost. That could be quite dramatically interesting if that happens. So we'll see how this plays. Over to you guys.
A rat-a-tat-a-tat-a-tat-a-tat.
A rat-a-tat-a-tat-a-tat-a-tat.
A rat-a-tat-a-tat.
A tat-a-tat.
A rat-a-tat-a-tat-a-tat-a-tat.
A rat-a-tat-a-tat-a-tat-a-tat.
A rat-a-tat.
A tat-a-tat-a-tat. A rat-a-tat-a-tat-a-tat-a-tat. A rat-a-tat-a-tat-a-tat-a-tat.
A rat-a-tat-a-tat.
A tat-a-tat. A rat-a-tat-a-tat-a-tat-a-tat. A rat-a-tat-a-tat-a-tat-a-tat.
A rat-a-tat-a-tat-a-tat-a-tat. A rat-a-tat-a-tat-a-tat-a-tat. A rat-a-tat-a-tat-a-tat-a-tat.
A rat-a-tat-a-tat-a-tat.
A rat-a-tat-a-tat-a-tat. A rat-a-tat.
A tat-a-tat-a-tat. A rat-a-tat-a-tat.
A tat-a-tat. A rat-a-tat-a-tat-a-tat-a-tat.
A rat-a-tat-a-tat-a-tat-a-tat.
A rat. A tat-a-tat-a-tat-a-tat.
A rat-a-tat-a-tat-a-tat-a-tat.
A rat-a-tat-a-tat.
A rat-a-tat-a-tat-a-tat-a-tat.
A rat-a-tat.
A tat-a-tat-a-tat.
A rat-a-tat-a-tat-a-tat-a-tat.
A rat-a-tat.
A tat-a-tat.
A-tat-a-tat.
A rat-a-tat-a-tat-a-tat-a-tat.
Okay, we'll leave that there. Thank you. Some effects that you noticed there.
Well, you said machine gun fire, and it feels like you're just
Yeah.
firing stuff at each
Yeah.
other.
And when you do it in quick, like, you have to do it in quick succession anyway because of like the. I think doing 4 in a row is really quite fun because you've got to play with it so much to make it sound like what you're trying to get across.
Yeah.
But there was a really fun moment where you went really hard in and you were really you were belittling. You were doing the whole kind of like, I know you did this, but as a rat-a-tat-a-tat, because it's so venomous as you're saying it, and obviously it can be quite soft as well. But you like using a rat-a-tat makes you play with how diverse that is in that iambic pentameter.
You guys were doing some lovely stuff there. So you sped it right up at times, you slowed it right down at times as well, and it sounded very menacing. There was something that I really liked, which was where you left a line just hanging in the air between you, like you just said something really heartbreaking, and neither of you wanted to complete it. There was another moment where it broke down. And you kind of, there was a moment where she started a line and you just started your own line regardless. Shakespeare does that sometimes, and it does sound kind of chaotic and stilted, and because you were doing full lines and Kelly was doing a half line, it sort of sounded like you were bullying her and that you weren't getting a chance to say what you wanted to say. then another moment where it broke down completely, and Kelly started to complete a line, and then you completed your own line. Again, you know, this does happen in Shakespeare, and we can find it. Sometimes, incidentally, it's hard to see in the text, and editors have to make a decision. Is this even verse anymore? So a famous example of this is the opening lines of Hamlet, where it's so bitty that it's actually hard to tell, are these people completing a line of iambic pentameter between them, you know, bantering backwards and forth, or are they just talking, you know, in prose, you know, non-verse? Really hard to tell. Editors have to make that decision. I think we're going to leave that there for today. I hope that's given you a useful toolkit of some ways that you might play around with verse yourselves before you even approach the written text. The idea of this is just to get you used to the rhythms of it, get you used to the possibilities of it, the ways in which you can simply use these lines, these rhythms to tell a story. And then when you do come to this language, which can be quite difficult, you're actually off to a head start already, because you know that there's a way of using the rhythm itself to tell the stories and of identifying the kinds of dynamics simply by the shape of the words on the page. I hope that's helpful. Thank you to Neil, thank you to Kelly, and happy verse speaking.